So Coolermaster have released their new Silencio series of cases this year, this one being the S600 and this one being the S400. Now they sent them over to me and said, Tech, yes, can you take a look at these and tell us if they're the best? And I said, sure thing, we'll get a couple of builds going through them, but as always with the case review, I'm gonna be putting these things under the temperature tests. We're gonna be putting a 32 core Threadripper inside with a 2080 Ti in this one, the S600, which comes in at about 100 US or in Australia 139 AUD. The micro ATX version, we're going to be shoving a 780 Ti build in that too and putting this under the stress test to see if this one can handle the heat. Now this one comes in a little bit cheaper. In the US it's $10 cheaper, and then in Australia it's about 20 AUD cheaper. Now these cases do have the option to mount a tempered glass side panel on both of them. And in Australia, I think it's like $10 more to get the tempered glass option. But basically, earlier in the year, they released the NR400 and NR600. And Coolermaster told me these differ from the NR series in that they've got sound dampening inside, and they've also got FP120 fans. And these are essentially designed to be quieter and use less power. But one thing I will critique straight out of the get-go is that there's not two mounted at the front. So there's one mounted at the front, one mounted at the rear, so you get two included fans with these cases, both of them, the S400 and the S600, but I would like to see these kitted out with additional fans to fill all the slots, especially when you're approaching that 100 USD price tag. But anyway, with that aside, let's build up these two PCs and I can tell you guys all the things I liked and disliked about these new S series cases. So first things first with this case, if you want to even try, even not an extended ATX motherboard, but even some of those motherboards that just come out a little bit extra, then it won't fit in this case. It's max standard ATX. Also, we had a bit of problems with this power supply here. It didn't fit. So I think the maximum supported power supply length is 160 mil long. So we finished up the second build here in the S600 and the Threadripper. That is a pretty big cooler and it just fits. So you've got up to about 167 mil in CPU clearance for an air cooler. In terms of radiator support, you can fit up to a 120 mil fan and rad at the back, 240 mil at the top, and a 280 at the front. Though, if you do wish to install a 240 or a 280 at the front, then you will have to remove the optical disk drive. Now in terms of dust filters, you get one at the front that is detachable. You can clean that easily. You've also got the option at the top to change this from a mesh filter to a hard enclosed panel. Though keep in mind you will restrict airflow if you do this, though I will be testing temperatures very soon. And then lastly at the bottom you get very shallow feet to give a very sort of low profile look, and there is a dust filter underneath the case as well. As for the S400, that is not just a smaller case in terms of micro ATX, but it's also not as long. So you can only fit up to a 319 millimeter graphics card, but I shouldn't say only, but I did say that in contrast to the S600, where you can fit up to a 398 mil long GPU. Though on the front, you can only fit up to a 240 mil rad versus a 280 on the S600. But again, you will have to remove that optical disk drive if you want to install those bigger radiators or fans in both the front and the top. Though with all that out of the way, it's finally time to do some temperature tests and also some noise level tests, and then come back to you guys and give you the conclusion on the Silencio. So we just finished up the temperature test on the S400 with the GTX 780 Ti, and I'll throw up some graphs for you guys where this combination surprisingly was putting out over 300 watts, actually around about 350 watts. So the 780 Ti can definitely dump a lot of heat. And what we saw here with 100% fan speeds to keep things consistent was that having both the tempered glass side panel on and also having the standard sound dampening side panel on both raised the temperatures quite substantially over that of just having no side panel on. So we saw 78 degrees and 52 degrees on the CPU, and then with the sound dampening on, we had 80 degrees and 52 degrees again on the CPU. But having no side panel on, we saw the temperature drop down to 67 degrees, and then on the CPU, 40 degrees flat. So we had noise at 54 decibels with no side panel on and mesh filter on the top, but then when we put the side panel on, both the tempered glass and the silent panel scored in at 50 decibels, and then when we put the hard cover on the top in replacement of the mesh filter, we then dropped down to 49 decibels. One thing I will say about the side panel with the sound dampening on was, though, even though the sound meter wasn't picking it up, it was definitely dropping down the higher pitched frequencies, making it the quietest of the bunch. But the last two temperature tests we did was changing that mesh cover over to the hard cover, and we saw temperatures raise from 78 degrees to 81 degrees on the GPU, and then 52 to 53 on the CPU. But having the front open in terms of testing the airflow, in terms of its restrictiveness, saw the temperatures drop on the GPU with the mesh filter on, down to 76 degrees and then 48 degrees on the CPU side. So ultimately with the S400, sound dampening does come at a cost of raising temperatures. But let's test out now the S600 with the 32 core and also the 2080 Ti. So the S600 did show some better sound dampening, at least with the noise meter, than the S400 did. And that's what we were talking about just before with the S400, was different noises to my ears sound louder and don't sound as loud to the noise meter perhaps. And so what we saw with the S600 was basically some louder noises at the frequency that the noise meter was picking up, and that panel was blocking that out. It's a cozy 23 degrees in here. Like, yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I'm seeing it in camera and I'm tired. So we've now added in an LED fan and also an LED strip. Gives it a bit more bling, but also the temperatures did substantially drop on the GPU with the 780 Ti. We went from 78 degrees to 72 degrees. And then on the CPU side of things, we went all the way down to 43 degrees. So this is why in the intro, I kind of critiqued the case for not having enough fans from the get-go. They do make a big difference. Even something like this in the background, which is about a $3 LED fan from eBay, can make such a big difference for temperatures, especially when you're then putting two intake fans at the front, bringing in that cool air, and having that outtake fan bringing it out the back. But with that aside, let's move over now to a conclusion on the S400 and S600. So basically, when it comes down to the Silencio series, you're getting a case that looks good, has the sound dampening, which will reduce noise, but at the same time, it will cost you temperatures. And so I think it's geared up towards someone who wants to put in low-powered components or make something that's enthusiast but not overclock it. As we saw here today, I didn't even overclock the 780 Ti, and the 32-core build with the 2080 Ti, that was a little bit too much for this case to handle. But on the same token, it did have phenomenal build quality. I did like the fact that it had all the standoffs pre-installed for a standard ATX board on the S600, and then for an S400, a standard micro ATX fit. There's some other touches that I did like on the case was the cushioning for the power supply at the bottom. They actually put a ring inside as to stop any vibrations coming out in the form of noise if you mount a power supply with a high RPM fan. It was also nice to see them include a standard SD card reader, though I will critique this in only having USB 2 support. I'd like to see them upgrade that to USB 3, since you will cap out on memory transfers at USB 2 speeds. So I guess it's fine for 1080p video editing, but I'm guessing the Silencio series is geared up towards that professional that wants a very clean aesthetic, wants to keep noise down, but still have good components inside for doing 4K video editing, for example. So ultimately, with the Silencio series, bringing it down to you guys with a concise verdict, if you want to go with this model, I'd only go with it for the sound dampening. With that, I wouldn't go with the tempered glass model. I'd just go with the standard side panel with that dampening inside over the tempered glass model, which costs more money. And even then, you can go with the NR series tempered glass if you want that look and save some money versus this S400 and S600 Silencio series. But with that aside, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us. Also, let us know in the comments section below what you think of Coolermaster's new cases coming out in 2019. Do you think they're going in the right direction with that clean look, or do you think they need to do something else entirely? Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always, and I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.